Livingston up well. Horsfield here to Andy Liddell. Can he get a shot in towards goal? He takes a strike. It's a fantastic equaliser. Oh, what a goal from Andy Liddell.
Lovely play this from Wigan, and McCulloch has spent Andy Liddell, and Liddell has a wonderful chance here. He's taken it, and he has become Wigan's all-time record goal scorer in league football.
And welcome to the Wigan Athletic Supporters Mental Health Group Q&A with Wigan Athletic legend Sir Andy Liddell. As always, my name is Jay Whittle and I'll be your host for this very special premiere this evening. So first and foremost, Andy, before I start hitting you with some hard-hitting questions, I'd like to say a massive congratulations on the birth of your daughter, Frankie Grace, last week. How is Frankie and your partner doing?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks for inviting me onto your show. Yeah, really well. Frankie's, what is it today? 29th? Yeah, day's just rolling to one now. So she's 9 days old. She was born in the 20th of January at 4:14. My wife Charlotte is doing really well. She had a caesarean, so we have to be a little bit careful with her moving around a little bit. We can't go far anyway, like everybody else in the world. But no, my daughter's doing really well. My son Jack, who's with us at 8, is really smitten with her. He's helping out a lot. So yeah, everything's good. So thank you.
That's absolutely brilliant to hear. And what was it like to become a father for the second time?
Well, it's actually the fourth time, Jay, to be honest.
The fourth time.
No, it's no problem. But my first daughter, Georgina, passed away after 11 days. Got another daughter, Katie, Jack, who's 8, and then Frankie, who's 9 days old. So it's nice, actually. I'm 47 now. I'm not a spring chicken. And we're a little bit, my wife's 41, she's 6 years younger than me, so she's absolutely fine. But I was a bit like, but it's, yeah, I think the older you get with anything, whatever it is, kids, life, with the older you get, you develop more patience, you develop more experience, and I think you enjoy things more, to be quite honest, and I'm really enjoying it. It's brilliant.
You mentioned earlier that you're in a different part of the world at the moment. For those who already don't know, where are you based at the moment and what are you doing?
Well, I live in a place called Lule, which is in the Algarve in Portugal now. We relocated 2018 in September. We just, not an off-the-cuff thing. My wife had mentioned it. The first time we ever came to Portugal on holiday, my wife had mentioned, I'd like to live here. And, people say things, it's different. When you're on holiday somewhere, everything's fantastic. The weather's fantastic. But to actually go and live there is a different thing. And just circumstances came around, just things came to a point where you just think, okay, my son is 5, nearly 6. If we're going to go, we do it now. So we did it. I don't regret it. It's a fantastic place to live. It's an outdoors type of place. It's an amazing place to live. The weather, apart from today, which is not great, it's a bit Wigan weather today, but yesterday, for example, which was January the 28th, it was 21 degrees outside. I'm walking around in shorts, we're in the garden. It's just a different way of life. It's really fantastic. So that's what we did, really.
Out of curiosity, when you move over to a place like Portugal, how do you convince yourself that you're there to work and there to live rather than just an extended holiday?
Easily. You organise yourself, you organise your life, and you have some discipline. You cannot come over here to live as though you're on holiday, because you'll be bankrupt within 18 months. All your money will be gone. You'll be drinking too much. You'll be not doing things you should do, really. So I didn't have a job when I came over here. My wife has a company. She has her own recruitment business, runs online. So we could be in the middle of Timbuktu as long as we've got a broadband connection. She works, which is good. I came over and just thought, well, I'll just basically do anything that I can do. Luckily, or unluckily for the people that are concerned, Mick McCarthy gave me a job with the Republic of Ireland fitness coach not long after being here. So I was doing that. I'm actually employed in a capacity called a team operations manager at a facility called a campus in Quinta del Lago, which welcomes teams for pre-season and mid-season training camps. Obviously, that's paused at the minute because nobody's going anywhere. So, but you have to organise your life and you have to be disciplined.
How have you found adapting to life after football?
I kind of not really had to, Jay, to be honest, because I stayed in it. Because obviously I finished at Rotherham as a player, and then I did the reserves stroke fitness coach job for probably a season, which was mad. That was a mad season, it started with me working as the reserve team coach / fitness coach for expenses. It just the roles there, because they didn't have any money. You've got to be all things to all men if you can be. And by the time March came around, I was the first team manager, which was nuts because Ronnie lost his job and other things were happening. I left at the end of the season, thanks to the incoming manager. And then sort of in the, if I'm not mistaken, September, October time, got a call from Paul Jewell, and I went down to Ipswich to be the fitness coach, where I did it for probably 7 years. So it was 2018, probably, before I came out of professional football, from starting in 1990. So you could probably say the last 2 years, but even in them 2 years, I've been doing the fitness coach for Republic of Ireland. So this is probably the first time in August when my contract ended with the Republic of Ireland. But my time as employment had kind of finished before that because COVID and different things, we weren't traveling. So that's probably it. But to be quite honest, I like to think I'm quite a balanced and well-rounded guy. I was when I played football. I knew that, and I know that football is not the real world. You need to be able to have life skills. You need to be able to organise yourself, organise your finances, organise your life, know how to work the washing machine, know how to work the dishwasher, know how to organise your life. And a lot of guys don't. A lot of guys struggle with that. I never was like that. And I don't expect to be like that because I come from parents that taught me to be like that.
It's a great answer. And do you think like some footballers sometimes do get mollycoddled in a way where they don't necessarily have these skills, which are very vital after your playing career ends, because it is a short career?
Well, you say it's a short career. For some, it's a short career. I did it for 19 years, so it can be a
it depends. It definitely depends on the player and the circumstance. Because I think, in my opinion, I always think football should always have a plan B, because you've seen so many cases where it only takes one freak injury to end it all in an instance.
I understand when people say that, and I understand that that's a concept that should be second nature to people. But put yourself in the footballer's shoes, where that's all you've done since the age of 3. It's all you know. It's all you believe that you will be a football player if you so happen to be like that. You're not going to think of those things. You're not going to think that an injury might finish it. You're not going to think that, this might happen, that might happen. You're not going to think that because, and this sounds stupid, but I know players and people have thought like that. You don't want to preempt something. You don't want to jinx it. So they just block it out. And it's not practical, but that's how they think. So I can see both sides to it. It is better. I think it's better if you're a balanced person and if you have the life skills that you need to survive outside of the sport, because it is a cocoon. It is you use the word mollycoddle. A lot of the players are told from an early age that they're the next best thing, when quite clearly they're not. They're not, especially in this era, they're not challenged verbally, should I say. They're not questioned as if to say, well, are you going to be good enough? No, that's not good enough. What you did there is not going to make it. They are cocooned in a world where they are told that they are so good and criticism doesn't come to them. Let me tell you, life ain't like that. And when they are like that and they face the criticism and they face the harsh word of saying, well, we don't think you're good enough, you're not going to make it, their world will fall apart. And that is where the problems start.
And that's a scary principle for any footballer, especially when you consider the concept of mental health. And we will touch on mental health. This is the reason why we're doing this today, to help raise awareness for mental health. We'll touch it towards the end of the podcast. And during your career, you amassed over 580 appearances, scoring goals for the likes of Barnsley, Wigan Athletic, Sheffield United and Oldham Athletic. How do you reflect back on your career after you hung up your boots in 2010 at Rotherham, where you became a manager?
I reflect on it that I got the most out of it. I made the most out of my career that I possibly could. I used every ounce of energy that I had to improve, especially physically. I wasn't the most talented player on some teams that I played on, I made the most of the talent that I had through sheer hard work. I think if you ask anybody that played with me, they would say that I was incredibly fit, one of the fittest, if not the fittest, on every team and any squad that I was in, because I never wanted a coach or a manager to turn around to me and say, you're not working hard enough. And nobody ever did. So I think I reflect on it like that. I reflect on the fact that I got the most out of my career that I could. So I think maybe that helps me as well. Now I am out of football, totally, to think, well, I did all I could. I have no regrets about anything I did. I have no regrets about anything that happened, because everything happens for a reason, I believe. So I think it's like that. I believe I was a very good Championship player. I wasn't a Premier League player because I played in the Premier League for a season, and I didn't play there anymore. So that tells me that I wasn't a Premier League player, but I was a very good Championship player because I spent a long time in there and proved that I could play in that league.
That's a great and really honest answer. And obviously, during your time at Barnsley, you helped them win promotion to the Premier League in 1997. How do you find your 7-year stay at Barnsley?
Fantastic. I would I say I loved every minute of it? I loved a lot of the time of it. I was taken advantage of contractually, which taught me a big lesson. But as a learning ground to learn how to be a professional footballer and to learn how to conduct yourself and to learn how to be a team player and the surroundings I was in, it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Some great coaches, good managers, really good players, good characters. So it taught me a lot about how to conduct myself and how to be a professional football player.
Before the call started, you said you'd watch some of my podcasts because you like to be as researched as possible for any particular situation. You mentioned there with the contractual situation. Did this help you learn in the future for similar kind of situations in football with contracts and that kind of wheeling and dealing of football?
Yes, it did. It taught me never to use the PFA as an agent again. That's what it taught me. No, it was when you're a young guy and you're playing football and somebody tells you, we want you to be a professional, here's your contract, you sign it. And I signed it, like we all did when we first turned professional. And then you get into the first team and then you get another contract. So you sign it. But as time goes on and you hear what happens in the changing room and you hear how much people are earning and you find out that it's true from people that you know and trust, then you have to look for advice. And I looked for advice through the PFA, not an agent, not a football agent, because I had a mistrust of them at that time. So I went through the PFA, and it was the worst thing I could have done, because the contract I signed when we got promoted into the Premier League was at least 200, 300% worse than my contemporaries who had come through the U team with me, who'd helped get to the Premier League. And that taught me a big lesson, that for all the PFA do, and they do a lot of good, they're not the all singing and all dancing entity that they pretended to be, because I got royally shafted on that contract, and I vowed never to let that happen again, and it didn't.
I think it's good though how you did manage to turn a real negative into a positive, and obviously football and everyday life is all about learning. And in your career, you mentioned that you made the most out of your career. You worked hard every day, and that's probably translated too as to why you're a fitness coach now, because like you said, you was probably the fittest, if not one of the fittest in every team you played for. How, for those who are interested in coaching, there's a lot of viewers of mine who are aspiring coaches. How would you recommend to be the perfect fitness coach, and how would you recommend to get the players up to speed in terms of physique, fitness, and strength and conditioning?
Well, first of all, I'm not a perfect fitness coach. I never claim to be. I never was. Everybody makes mistakes. Some of the things I first did when I was first, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. But this is probably a generic sort of answer, but for any job, just be yourself. Just be yourself. Be honest with people. Speak to them how you would like to be spoke to yourself. Don't tell them you can do something you can't. Don't promise them you can get them to do things that you can't. Just be an honest, genuine person. And when you're speaking with them and when you're asking them to do things that you know are difficult, physically difficult, I must say, when you deal with professional football players, it is an advantage that you've been one. I'm not saying that I'm better or worse than anybody else, but it is an advantage if you've been one around a professional football team, because they will look at you differently, and they will say, "Oh, well, but I've done that. I've done that drill I'm asking you to do. Them things that I'm asking you to do. These things we need to do. I've done them, and I know they can be done because I've done them." So that helps in that manner, but. As for qualifications wise and things that you can get all them, but they won't stand up when you're in confrontation or when you're in situations where you need to be emotionally where the player is. The only way that can happen is if you've experienced what they've experienced, and by doing something for 19 years, something that they're doing. That is something that you can't give to somebody, I'm afraid.
I think that's an excellent point you raised, because no one knows the life of a professional footballer better than someone who's been in those shoes and those areas throughout your career. And in your career, what a lot of people will be watching for today, you've become immortalised at Wigan Athletic, and you still hold the record of the club's all-time top goal scorer with 70 goals. How fondly do you look back at your time at Wigan and obviously that achievement?
Well, I'm very proud of that achievement. Obviously, I'm really proud of it. It's not a big tally, but Wigan's not. It's not been a club that's been going for 200 years. So it's a fairly young club, to be quite honest. So, but I was very proud to break it. I'm very proud to hold it. And I played my best football at Wigan. There's no doubt about that. Especially once Paul got there. I was playing well before that. But especially as soon as Paul got there and things started coming into place, and I played my best football at Wigan Athletic. There's no doubt in my mind about that, because as I go back to it as well, I was the fittest I've ever been when I was at Wigan Athletic. I was a fit guy at Barnsley, but when I got to Wigan and when we saw the standards when Paul came, you're like, you need to pull your finger out here. And I was doing a lot of work before, and I just upped it when Paul arrived, because it was what was demanded. But every listen, Jay, I loved every minute of every hour of every day playing football. I got paid for it. I got paid to do something that was my hobby. So I loved every minute of it. But my time at Wigan was probably my fondest, because I played my best football there.
Paul Jewell is someone who's, like yourself, also immortalised in the Wigan history books for how he helped the side rise from Division 2 all the way to the Premier League. How much of an influence did he have on your career? And obviously, you've obviously worked with him too at Ipswich Town as a fitness coach. So he's someone who has had a massive impact on your career.
Yeah. First and foremost, he's a great human being. He's a great guy, which is most important. You can take the football out of it and take the other stuff out. He's a great bloke. But when he arrived, it was the jolt that Wigan needed. We'd had a few managers before, and some things going on that probably weren't ideal. Players arriving that probably weren't suitable. But as soon as Paul came, I mean, it was wow. You better get on board with this guy, or you're going to be gone. And I wanted to stay. I wanted to play for Paul. I wanted to play for the club. As soon as he came, he was, he wasn't going to be messed about, but he had a few people to get rid of, a few characters that he didn't really care for, and it took him a little bit of time. I don't know, because I've never looked, but I think once the first squad he came on a first team, I bet there was not many, including me, that survived his tenure for the first couple of years, because it was a revolving door. He was getting what he needed out, getting what he needed in. I think there was maybe only me and Ariane, but not really many that made it 2 or 3 years, I wouldn't have thought, because he was being ruthless, and he needed to be, because that's what the club needed. But he was not a man to be messed with, put it that way.
Having spoken to a few of your former teammates about Paul Jewell, Gary Teal shared some special memories of him. So many people have been touched by Paul Jewell, and they always mention the physicality, the fitness side of his training sessions. What was it like to be involved in a Paul Jewell training session?
I loved it. It was brilliant, because I was super fit, so not a problem for me. But it was meticulously organised. Chris Hutchins, as well, his assistant, was a great coach, a fantastic coach, one of the best coaches, if not the best coach I've played for. Fantastic coach. Sessions were high intensity. punishments for losing, physical punishments for losing. I don't mean getting beaten up. I mean running. Physical punishments for getting beat in small-sided games, and it really competitive. And to be quite honest, playing the matches was easier than training half the time, because it was just a lot of running, which obviously didn't please some people, but to me it was no problem. Physical training, hard, keep ball sessions, just not long tactical sessions. They weren't long. The sessions didn't last forever. I've heard some players say they go into sessions and they last 3 hours and you're standing around. That never happened. But we were that's the fittest team I've ever played for. The first year, probably the year we won League One and the first year in the Championship was probably the fittest squad I've ever played in. It was scary. Oh, I mean, we would steamroll the teams. The physicality. Myself, Lee McCullough, Jimmy Bullard, Gary Teal. That's probably the 4 that spring to mind. There's probably something. Jason Jarrett was a decent athlete, but those you're talking proper athletes that can play football as well. And if you've got that, especially in the forward positions, then you're going to do all right.
I think when you combine the hard work of the fitness and the intensity with the natural ability of being good at football, it made a real recipe for success at Wigan. And during your time at the club, we mentioned how you become immortalised. And when we announced that you was appearing on the podcast and as part of the Wigan Athletic supporters mental health group fans Q&A, the response has been quite overwhelming. We've been inundated with emails and messages from fans who truly adore you. Fans have just been wanting to say thank you so much for the memories you've given to the club. And I always like to ask, what questions do you think the fans might have asked you before we get into them?
What questions do I think the fans might have asked me? I have got no idea, Jay. Absolutely.
That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it, because
no, I wouldn't have a clue, not a clue. But whatever questions have asked me, I'll try and answer them honestly. The problem sometimes you get is when some people say, "I'm going to ask you a question." Sometimes I don't like the answers.
Yeah, so sometimes that is the case, but some of these questions are great. And before I even start, I'd like to say thank you to all the fans for getting involved and asking the questions, because you're doing my job for me at the end of the day, and I always appreciate that. But no, the first one's actually from my granddad, John Whittle, and he asked, what initially attracted you to move to Wigan Athletic from Barnsley?
Well, I was annoyed in my latter stages at Barnsley because I was playing well. I should have been in the team and I wasn't. And I went to see the manager and he said that we have to sell some players, and the players that we have to sell are the ones on big wages, have come down from the Premier League. Well, that wasn't my fault. That was nothing to do with me. So I was a little bit annoyed. Anyway, so I was probably on the verge of asking to leave anyway. But then Wigan Athletic called me, said, we've agreed a fee with Barnsley. Will you come over and speak to us? I said, yes, of course I will. There was ex-Wigan people there. John Benson was the biggest factor in it. God rest his soul. I got on so well with Benno, and Brendan O'Connell was there, and some ex-Barnsley players, obviously through John Benson's connections, had signed. I went over, spoke to them, showed me the new plans for the stadium, showed me Springfield Park, showed me the salary, showed me the contract. Done.
And it obviously was quite an interesting period at that time at Wigan Athletic, the transition which was going on from Dave Whelan, and Stuart Alcaraz linking onto that as one of the first big signings of the Dave Whelan era. Was it a difficult decision buying into the dream he had for the club when it seemed quite far-fetched at the time?
It wasn't far-fetched at the time. It didn't seem far-fetched to me. I just wanted to play, Jay. I wanted to play. Wigan wanted me. I wanted them because I wanted to play. So, people say, and I say, they show up in the new stadium. Even when they show them in the new stadium, I didn't really care, Jay. I didn't really care if they were going to a new stadium or not. I didn't really care if they'd stayed at Springfield Park for 10 years. It didn't bother me. They were saying to me, you are going to play. You will be one of our first choices. Then it's up to you to stay in the team. We're going to pay you a decent salary. We're a good club. The chairman wants to get to the Premier League. We've got some good players. What's not to like about that? It wasn't,
Absolutely.
I can't say I had this 10-year plan that I was going to do this and do that. I wasn't. I wanted to leave Barnsley because I wasn't playing and I thought I should have been. Wigan wanted to sign me. That was enough.
Absolutely, and it was such a big motivating factor. And Dave Whelan was someone who had a massive influence at his time at Wigan Athletic in his 23-year reign. And what are your personal memories of Dave Whelan? Did you have much interaction with him? Because I know he was in and around the training ground.
No, not really. When he came, his presence was, when he was there, because it was the whispers of going, oh, James coming down, and but nothing other than when I signed, he said good luck and I hope you do really well for us. John's got high hopes for you, and I said I'll do my utmost best to live up to them. He used to come down into the changing room, wish us all the best. He'd come on the pitch in the warm up, just come on, Andy, give us a couple of goals today, sort of thing, and. Other than that, not. I couldn't say that I had a special relationship with him because he was the chairman and I was a player. So, but a nice guy, and I knew sooner or later the club would get into the Premier League because of Dave, because of what he was doing. He was backing them financially. He was putting his life and heart and soul into that club. So, it was fantastic for him when they actually made it to there. But being part of the club at the time, I knew that they would make it there one day.
Jay Whittle is quite widely known, even to this day, as Mr. Wigan Athletic. And the 2013 FA Cup win, I know, quite a few years after you retired as a player, that was a special moment for all the Wigan fans. Do you remember watching the FA Cup final?
I watched it. I did a TalkSport interview, actually, before that game.
Is that the famous one?
No, it wasn't that one. Where they were asking me about, blah, 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 and this, that, and I said, they've got a chance. It's a 2-horse race. They've got a chance. And I was getting texts from people going, what are you talking about? They're going to get beat 6-7. It's a 2-horse race. And you never know. You just never know. And I was so pleased for them when they did it, especially Roberto, who I played with. Great guy. Graham Jones, played with Graham. He was on the staff. Great guy. Alex Cribley, all the people that were still there. It was a brilliant. And for Dave, it must have been amazing. And for the town. So there was nobody happier than me when they did it. It was fantastic.
With Roberto Martinez and Graham Jones, they've both gone on to achieve great things in the managerial side of things. Did you envision that as a player? Did they have that football IQ to go on at that stage of their careers? Was it quite a surprise?
Roberto was always a deep thinker about football, so I could probably see that. Graham, I couldn't sit here and say to you, I knew he was going to be a brilliant assistant coach or assistant. I used to car share with him. Not talking, I knew he was doing his badges. He was a bit older than me. He was kind of coming back from injury when I signed, actually. I think he'd had a cruciate knee operation. I played with Graham, but not much. Good player. Very, very physical player. I wouldn't like to get on the wrong side of him when he was on the pitch. And he was a really, really good player for Wigan. And I really liked him. Great guy. I actually saw him in Portugal last year when he brought his team Luton out for a 3-day camp at the camp, and I was having a good chat with him. But a really nice guy. But again, both of them, no surprise that they succeed because they're both really nice people and they treat people well. So it's no surprise when people like that do well. But they were. I could see Roberto was a deep thinker about football. Football was his life. You could see that, and they've both done it really well. And it's brilliant what they've both done.
I think Roberto's always been quite fascinating when he's talked on interviews about his football philosophies. A lot of fans are requesting him on this podcast. I don't think it's possible to get the Belgian manager on at this stage just yet, but never say never. And the next question is from Sam Wall, and he asked, would you consider yourself as one of Wigan's best ever forwards?
I think that would be a question you'd have to ask people that have watched me. I couldn't answer that. I have no idea. But people that have watched me and watched a lot of other people, that's for them to say. I would never say that I was one of the best, or I would never say I was one of the worst. All I would say is nobody tried harder than me.
Absolutely. And I think it's for me, when I see questions like that, I always think of stats. I'm quite a big stat person. Your record all-time goal scorer, that suggests that you're up there without a doubt. 70 goals, still the record stands to this day, and we'll talk about that. But I think one memory that stands out for Wigan fans as well is winning the Auto Windshield Shield, which is now the Football League trophy in 1999. How do you reflect on that, and what was that moment like on that special day at the old Wembley?
Well, it was boiling hot, which I was so happy about because I love playing in the heat, because I knew I was fitter than everybody else. So I knew that I would be going when people were flagging. I was always one of these insane players that in pre-season, when it was red hot, I loved it. Give me a pre-season camp somewhere red hot, or when it's red hot, everybody used to moan about, oh, in August it's red hot. I loved it because I knew I was fitter than everybody else, and I'd be going at the end when everybody's dropping on the knees. So that was the first thing I remember about it. And then I just remember just as I was walking out thinking, this is brilliant. I'm a kid from a council estate in the middle of Leeds. All of it, blink your eyes, and I'm playing football, kicking balls onto a hedge with my mates, and now I'm playing at Wembley. I was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And people denigrate that competition because it's the bottom two divisions. I don't care. hundreds and hundreds of players better than me will never, ever get to play at Wembley. And I did it twice. So I don't care how small they think the competition is or how it's not a Premier League. I don't care. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then to win it right at the end with Paul Rodgers scoring, it was brilliant. And Millwall had a lot of fans. And then when we won, like the stadium just emptied and it was just our guys in the corner. And it was really, really good. We had a good team. That was a good team. Some good characters, good players, good coaches, good team. But I really enjoyed that day. It was really good. But like I said, I think the most memorable thing I can remember is it was red hot, and I was like, yes, it's red hot. I'm going to be able to go longer than everybody else.
It's a dream come true for every young footballer, every young lad in this country to go to Wembley and win a trophy, no matter what trophy it is. Like you said, people sometimes may look down on the Football League trophy, but it's just important. And like you said, players who you said are a lot better may never get the chance to play there, and you did that. And you mentioned how good that Athletic squad were in the 1998 to 99 season and that era. Can you talk us through that your memories of that squad in particular, especially for the younger viewers who won't remember this squad or might not even been born, like myself? Sorry about that, Andy.
Yeah, it's no problem, mate. It's no problem. I don't care. It's good characters was probably how I would say. Some good characters. It was a championship team, Jay. That team was a championship team playing in League One. Simple as that. Because the finances that Dave put into it allowed it to be that way. You know, you're not going to get a championship player playing in League One unless you're paying him a bit. You're just not going to. That's how it is. That's how it is now. Even more so, the finances now are just nuts. But even at that time, Wigan was spending, Dave was spending. So it was being able to buy the quality of championship player, pay them probably championship wages in some cases, and that's how you get the quality. And then when you get good characters and you put them together and organise them well and get them fit, then you're going to have a good team. And we had some really good players. Simon Howard, fantastic centre forward. Michael O'Neill, Darren Sheridan. Darren Sheridan is one of the best players I ever played with. That's how good he is. So you've got him in there. Sharpie, Brads, Ariane Dazoo, the list is any Stuart Barlow, David Lee, Scott Green, they're really, really good team. And we were spending, Dave was spending some money. He spent £1 million on Nathan. Nathan was in League One when we came. And, when you start spending £1 million in them days on a player in League One, everyone's going, oh, these guys are going for it.
Absolutely. And during that time, there was a real camaraderie and togetherness in that squad. Did you feel it as players? And how much better does it make it when you get these achievements and you're just a group of friends at the end of the day?
Oh, it's a joy to go to work. Whatever job you do, Jay, if you enjoy going to work and you enjoy your workmates, female, male, kids, whatever you're doing, whoever you're working with, then it don't feel like work. I mean, playing football is not work anyway. It's physically hard, don't get me wrong, but you're not doing a 12-hour shift in the hospital, are you? So it's a hobby you're getting paid for, and it's enjoyable. But it makes it a little bit more special when you're all getting on. Listen, let's not have it happy go. We're not all the best friends that we've ever been, and we're not all in touch with everybody all the time. It doesn't work like that. Football's not like that. But if you get a good spirit, which is what we had, and you get people willing to go the extra mile for each other, which is what we had, and they're good players as well, then you're going to have a good success. People, this is a different topic, but people, I see people, I'm not in football now, and I see people, we're going to do this philosophy, we're going to do that philosophy, we're going to play like this, but in rocket science, Jay, football is not rocket science. It just isn't. Get some good players, get them fit, get them organised, get them motivated by your man management skills, and guess what? You'll have a good team.
Absolutely. I think sometimes, especially with the development of modern technologies, it's almost like it's a bit too far advanced, and you can try and work too hard to think of new philosophies, new techniques, new tactics, where you kind of overcomplicate the game a bit too much, like you alluded to. You just need a hard-working squad, score more goals than the opposition, and you won the game, and the more games you win, the more chances you get to win the title. And in that Athletic squad, you mentioned quite a few names there. Roy Carroll's been on the podcast. He's a good character. Have you got any funny untold stories from that Athletic squad of your memories at Springfield Park and the early days of the JJB Stadium?
I remember distinctly Roy and Pat going head to head in a challenge that ended in one of them headbutting the other. That was a funny one.
I need to know more about that.
That was a funny one. We used to do a skills session on a Friday morning, which kind of found out the less technically gifted than the others. It was supposed to be a fun skills game, and it was, but we used to put a lot of pressure on it. Obviously, you can imagine the banter, there'd be cones out, you had to dribble around, sprint back, keep the ball up. Roy, being Roy, obviously thought he was a good outfield player, which he wasn't, but he'll probably tell you he was. And him and Pat just got into some sort of disagreement, or somebody said, you can't do this, you can't do that, with a bit of industrial language as well. And then the next thing you know, the head's gone on from one to the other, and the noise was, oh my God, it was unbelievable. The noise of the headbutt. Oh God, what is going on? So that was interesting between the pair of them, and other little things as well. But yeah, there was some feisty training sessions. But that was the intensity we trained at. There was some scuffles and arguments, and there always was in good teams because you were training so hard. We weren't particularly training hard at that time. I just think Pat and Roy were just not having whatever each other had said to each other. I can't remember who threw their head on the other, but it was a fair old noise. It made me wince anyway, put it that way.
I think it's just a competitive nature of footballers, and I think when people think of funny characters at Wigan, they'll think of Jimmy Bullard. Have you got any stories of Jimmy Bullard? Because from the people I've spoken to, Gary Teal, he used to room with Jimmy Bullard, and he just wished that he had a bit of an off switch, because sometimes he'd just whack him with a pillow when he's sleeping. Yeah.
Well, there was two of them. Jimmy had his moments, but Darren Sheridan was some characters as well. That's Shez. I'd had Shez at Barnsley, and he was hilarious as well with Shez. But Jimmy had some style. I just remember Jimmy just used to pick on Flinney something rotten. Michael Flynn used to be the butt of his jokes, and oh my goodness me, used to absolutely terrorise him all day long. Stuff that's probably not suitable to tell you about family-wise, but oh goodness me, he used to terrorise him every day. Would do something to him or take the mickey out of him doing something. But Jimmy was good as gold, good player. I saw Jimmy as well not too long ago. He used to have a place out in Portugal. He's a unbelievable golfer. I played golf with him. It was like playing golf for the professional. It was absolutely amazing, and he's doing really well for himself, which is brilliant. But absolutely. Yeah, he was a live wire. Yeah.
With Jimmy Bullard, I remember Nathan Ellington in a podcast with Emerson Boyce. He said that with Michael Flynn, there was once a situation in Rigoletto's with hot sauce. If you was there for that conversation. No. I think for the viewers who don't know, Jimmy Bullard bet Michael Flynn £50 to sniff some hot sauce. Michael Flynn did it, and but Jimmy Bullard, I don't think he paid up. And I think you can probably imagine that.
Really surprised. I have to tell you, mixing in social circles, I wouldn't really choose to go into a restaurant with Flinney and Jimmy at the same time. I've got to be honest. I think it'd be no. I won't be doing that, to be quite honest. He just used to play pranks on him. He used to just torment him. But fair play to Flinney, because Flinney used to love it for some reason. I don't know why, but he used to terrorise him. But yeah, Jimmy would get himself into some scrapes.
It's light-hearted situations, and it is nice. I always thought it was quite heartwarming in a way that Jimmy was almost, he would call the Peter Pan of football by Gary Teal, like he would never grow up, and he'd always kind of had that schoolboy mentality of playing pranks and having a bit of a laugh in quite a serious sport.
Yeah, he did. He got a bit of a rude awakening when he first arrived, I'm afraid. There was a story when, which is a story. It is the Peter Pan. He was buzzing around, but he first arrived, Jimmy, he'd just come from Peterborough, and we were playing Walsall away, and I'm really good friends with Nicky Eden, still am. And Jimmy had come from Peterborough, and we were playing Walsall. We got beat at Walsall, and I don't know if Jimmy had been at fault for something or one of the goals or something, but he'd come in and sort of saying blah blah blah. And Nicky's a top player, a massively underrated player for Wigan Athletic and Barnsley, by the way. But Jimmy sat down, and Paul was getting ready to sort of have his post-match, probably going to go nuts, to be quite honest. And Jimmy's saying something, and Nicky said, "Listen," he said, "you're not playing in bleep Peterborough now." He said, "This is a good team. This is a good league. You pull your finger out or you're done. I'll nail you." And it put Jimmy in his place a little bit, and he sat there, and I think he might have been quiet for about a day, but after that, it was back to normal. But it just shows you it's that fun element should never be taken out of it, but it means a lot to a lot of people, Jay, playing, not just for Wigan, but playing professionally. And I think it put a bit on Jimmy that day. It quieted down for about a day, but after that, it was back to normal.
With Nick Eden, I'm glad you mentioned him because a lot of players from that squad said he's probably the most underrated. His set piece deliveries was outstanding for centre forwards and attacking players, because to whip it in with that pace and precision he consistently used to do, it obviously takes a lot of skill to do that on a consistent basis. Because I think, in my opinion, I don't know if you agree, but one of the biggest things in football is consistency over a period of time. You could be excellent one week and not so great the other. So it's all about maintaining that consistency. But we can talk football on a different occasion. It's all about the fans' questions, and they've asked some great questions. And you played a key part in Wigan's second division championship win, which would have been League One, in the 2002-03 season. Can you recall memories from that season and of that squad?
I recall wanting to beat Nathan at scoring goals that season. We were having a competition. Nathan had come for £1 million, and I thought, right, you're going for £1 million? Let's see then. And I remember him staying at the start because I got on with Nathan really well. And he was actually from Bradford. I used to give him a lift home to Bradford a few times because I lived in Leeds. And he used to mess and joke, saying, I'll score more than you. I said, listen, it's going to look bad on you if you cost £1 million and I score more than you, though, innit? And I did. I scored more league goals than him. I made sure I did. But no, I just, from pre-season that season, I knew we'd get promoted without, nothing's ever guaranteed. But I just looked around. I saw the squad we had. I saw the players Paul was signing, Paul himself, Chris Hutchins, the coach. It became quite obvious that we were just going to blow teams away, and we ran all over them. We dominated them physically. We dominated them mentally because we weren't shrinking violets on the pitch. Probably said some things that you won't get away with now. Not bullying, but trying to win by any means, which I'm not saying is right, but we just had some characters that would do that. And we just destroyed a lot of teams. And, we got a lot of points. We scored a lot of goals. But I think the main thing about that team, I remember, was just the physicality of it. We just ran all over teams. We could just have players that just kept going and going. It didn't matter if it was at the JJB on a Saturday afternoon, 3:00, the pitch was perfect, or it didn't matter if it was Brentford away, throwing it down on a Tuesday night, freezing cold. Didn't matter. Anything that got in our way was getting moved out of the way, and we had some really determined guys. And I really enjoyed that season. It was a really, really good season.
It was a really special season for all the fans. And you mentioned there was no shrinking violets. How important is gamesmanship in football? I think that's the nicest way of saying that kind of thing. I know another word fans use, but it's not a PG appropriate phrase.
No. It's unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, Jay, again, it's mentality. It's part of the game. It is part of the game. If I'm not having a very good game and somebody's getting the better of me, and I'm thinking, how can I do it? I'm going to try and put him off verbally. That's what I'm going to do. And I did it plenty of times. I'm not proud of it. I said some things that probably I shouldn't have said, but to get an advantage, you would do it and everybody would do it. There's so much verbals on the pitch that the fans don't know about, and gamesmanship and trying to get one up and trying to get the referee on your side and asking the person that you're playing against. More often than not, I would probably do it when I was on top of somebody. I would do it when I'd scored a goal or I'd scored a couple of goals, and it'd be, you're trying to mark me? You want no chance, pal. Absolutely no chance. They're laughing at you. They're just laughing at you as you try and keep up with me, or I've scored one and I say, wait till you see the next one. Or just little things like that to try and get an edge on them, and it happens. And we had some in that team that were very, very good at it. They weren't shy in coming forward on the pitch, put it that way.
I think I can imagine the players who would have been quite good at that skill. Lee McCulloch is probably one that springs to mind. He's an honest pro, but I'm sure he had his own little ways of doing things. He was an excellent player. And there's been so many great players you played with during your time at Wigan. And Socrates, cleverly named, was wondering who did you feel was some of the best players you'd seen coming through at Wigan?
Coming through, Leighton Baines was the best player. First training session, 17 years old, or whenever he trained with us, and you think he's nothing to look at physically, skinny, small, goes into his first tackle. We're like, oh my God, he absolutely cemented somebody, because what people didn't realise about Leighton was he was nasty. He could be nasty, Leighton. He could really go through somebody, and he was hard. And as soon as somebody at 17 does that, and then you see the ability they've got, you think, well, he's going to be a player. You could see that. It was really, really outstanding player. You could see at that age. And then obviously career he went on to have. And another one though as well, a great guy, great lad. I bumped into Leighton quite a few years ago. He was on a plane going to Dubai. I was a lot older, I'd finished, and, just chatting to him, he was so polite, so really nice guy, really, asking how my wife was and stuff like that. And he'd played for England at that point, he didn't have to be like that. I think he'd played for England, or he was about to, or something like that. A really nice guy, but he was the best by a country mile. Fantastic player.
I think it translated as well how he stayed in that Everton team for so long, and I actually think he was one of the best left backs in the 2010 decade. Along with Ashley Cole, outstanding player. And at Wigan, he created so many memories. The goal against Ipswich Town, that was an absolute screamer. His first professional goal, and to do it in that style, I mean, I don't think you could see many better first ever professional goals than that.
Well, he used to do it in training, Jay, so it was no surprise to us. It's not really a surprise to see him do it. It really wasn't. He'd do it all the time. He'd smack it in the top corner, 20, 25 yards, the left foot like a hammer, tackled like a hammer. He could run. He could just add everything. And people say, oh, he's small. He's small. You don't see him tackle. He'd leave a bit on you. He didn't really care. He had that bit of nastiness in him, which you need to be a professional football player.
I fully agree. And the next question is from Trian Crown 32, and he asked, do you have a favourite manager that you work for, either at Wigan Athletic or throughout your career at different clubs?
Paul was my favourite manager I played for, because I played my best football for him. So whatever he did, however he did it, he was the best player. On the other side of it, I'd worked for Paul as well as a manager. But the years I've spent with Mick McCarthy, I would have loved to play for him, and I've only worked under him as a fitness coach. But he's another one, just great bloke, really, really nice bloke, down to earth, speaks to you how he expects to be spoken to, and he's a really top human being. And you can see why. I understood why he's had the success he's had now and previously. When you see him, the players love him. All the players and staff that Mick McCarthy has had would run through walls for him. I'll tell you a story about him quickly. I know it's not a question, but Ipswich, when he left Ipswich, he'd said to the players and the members of staff, we're going to go out for a drink, sort of a goodbye drink at a bar. Now, if you know football teams and football squads and football clubs, there's always some people that don't like the manager, or he don't play me, or he don't do this, he don't do that. Every single player turned up. Every single member of staff, every single member of academy staff turned up. That's something I'd never seen before. So that kind of tells me everything about Mick. So I would probably say that Mick's probably the best manager I've worked for, but Paul was the best manager I played for.
That's a great answer, especially with the team night out thing, because like you said, not everyone in football naturally gets on with the manager for various different reasons. And he obviously had the respect of everyone in that squad, from his staff to all the players. And in football, I know during the 90s, the scene was probably a lot different. Was there more of a social side of football back then in terms of nightlife, going out as a team?
Yes, there was. It was more acceptable, and not every person was a journalist. Every person in the world's a journalist now, Jay. They've got a camera. So they are. But I was never a big drinker as a player. I never was, to be quite honest. I probably drink more now than I did as a player. Not that I'm some sort of raging alcoholic. I'm not. But I didn't really like the taste of it, Jay, to be quite honest. I'd go out and we'd have a few nights with the Wigan lads or the Barnsley lads. But, I didn't. It wasn't like I went out every week or I socialised every week. I didn't. I lived in Leeds. When I played for Wigan, I lived in Leeds. So it was a 45, 50-minute drive back for me, which never affected me physically. But if you're on a night out, if you're going on a night out with the guys, you don't want to get a cab for an hour, do you? Or you don't really want to be staying over in hotels just because you're having a night out. I didn't want to do that. And that was me. When we had team nights out organised, I'd go, but not to all of them, because that was my choice. And I'll be honest, I didn't really like the taste of alcohol that much, Jay, to be quite honest. So it was good. I would, when I went out with the guys, it was brilliant. But like I said, nowadays it must be, well, there's no point nowadays for them, because everybody's a journalist. Everybody wants to take a picture of it. Everybody wants to tell a story about it. And it's pretty sad, really. Yeah,
it's how social media has developed into that kind of environment. And during your time at Wigan, you scored a lot of goals. We've touched upon that. And Paul Roach, a big Athletics fan, would like to know, which one was your favourite?
Yeah, I've been asked this one a lot. And I loved them all, whether it was from 1 inch or 25 yards. But I did one of these the other day, and there was three. I think probably my favourite was the one I broke the record with, because that was obviously significant, and it was a decent shot as well. And it was in a good team victory because we walloped Crystal Palace live on Sky. 5-0, I think, or I don't know if they scored 5-1, 5-0, something like that. They got away with 5. It could have been 25. I remember that day we absolutely battered them. But there was 2 others as well. I scored a nice chip at Notts County away, and I scored a volley at Millwall away as well. And for some strange reason, I always used to really enjoy playing at Millwall away. I used to really love it. Fans would get right after you, and atmosphere was always good. So it's probably them 3. But if I had to pick one, if I had to be nailed down for one, it'd be the one that I broke the record with. I broke Lloyd's record with.
It's great that you mentioned the Notts County goals, because Stuart Alker would like to know, do you remember scoring the 2 goals at Notts County on Boxing Day while facing away from goal?
Yeah. I'll tell you another funny story about that one as well, Flinny. So they tell me, but old Flinny, he made a really good run for my, I don't know if it was the first or the second one, and I killed it in the corner. But I think one of the lads was round at his house or something, and he put this video on. He said, watch this. So they see me score this goal, and he said, well, it's not even you that scored the goal. He said, yeah, but look at the 25-yard run that I made to score the goal. He's got a video out of a 25-yard run. He hadn't even scored. But, yeah, so that was a funny story attached to that one. But yeah, I remember it. I remember it, and it's something I'd practiced before. I always used to notice, if you're running across the 18-yard box diagonally, the keepers always come off their line because they're expecting, I don't know, a cross or to go wide. And it was something that I'd practiced, and it just came to me that day that I was running diagonally across the box. I knew the goalkeeper would be off his line, and it worked a treat. Yeah, so that was a nice one.
It was a spectacular goal. And Tony Toppin has asked, who came up with the throwing routine that he scored so many goals from?
Chris Hutchins.
Chris Hutchins.
Chris Hutchins, the coach. We used to do a crossover move, which was so simple in its setup, organisation again. 2 of us would stand like this. The throw would go to throw. One would make a movement this way down the line. I would come inside on my right foot. If the opportunity arose, I'd hit a shot. If I wasn't going to shoot, I would knock it to the far post. I think Simon scored a couple from that. And simple as that. It was just so simple. And people just used to fall for it, to be quite honest, which I'm more than glad about.
Absolutely, yeah. Simple and effective. And Sean O'Hara's asked, what was the best goal you scored in your career for any club you play for?
Oh, the best? Ooh, goodness me. That's a good question.
Well, we'll narrow it down, make it a bit easier. In terms of the best goal, pure technique and skill rather than the meaning behind the goal.
Pure technique. The one that springs to mind is a free kick I scored for Oldham. It was the hardest I'd ever hit a ball. It went like a rocket. It was against Swindon away. And I'd like to see how all the gadgets have got now. I'd like to see how fast it was going. It was like a golf shot. I didn't even feel it leave my foot. It went like an absolute missile. And that was a sweet spot. But I think for skill, probably the chip, to be honest, Notts County. Technically, probably that, because, like I said, I practiced it. But when you're going away from the goal, to get it back up and over the goalkeeper is, well, it's not easy, obviously, but it's something that I practiced. But them 2, that's probably the hardest ball shot I'd ever hit, the free kick for Oldham Athletic. Like I said, I didn't even feel it leave my foot. I hit it that hard.
It's always a great moment when you hit a shot so nicely and so fiercely and it ends up in the back of the net. And a question that was quite popularly asked by the fans was, do you take notice now when players are scoring regularly for Wigan in case your goal scoring record comes in jeopardy? Because I know Will Green were quite close in recent years. I think he scored 65 in all competitions.
Yeah, I met Will Grigg. He came over with Sunderland to the training camp that I was working at, and I was having a laugh and a joke with him saying, thanks for leaving. But not really. The records will be there to be broken. It doesn't really bother me. I hope somebody does break it, because they'll be as happy and proud as I am of being holding it. You know, it's something to tell my kids and my grandkids and things like that. But no, not really. I don't watch it and worry about it. I thought Nathan would break it. He left. And you know, if Will in some capacity broke it, if he come back to the club or somebody else come, no, not at all, no. But yeah, I did have a joke at Will's expense, which his teammates roundly enjoyed in front of him.
I can imagine it was a great moment. I think Max Power as well would have been at Sunderland at the same time, because he used to play with Will at Wigan. And Andy Gill has asked, he asks this all the time to every guest we have. It's Andy Gill's special question. If you can relive one moment during your time at Wigan, what would it be?
None of them, because I've lived them all. But I'm not a big believer in going back to relive a moment. I've done it. And going back the second time, it's never as good as the first time. So none of them. I did them all, loved them all. Goals, memories, teammates, colleagues, managers. I won't go back and relive any of them.
One of the most popular questions was, did you have the option to stay at Wigan Athletic going into the Premier League?
No. I've been asked this before, and why did I leave? I wasn't given a choice, really. And it was a business decision, and that's absolutely fine on the club's behalf. They said to me that we're only offering players over 30, I was 30 at the time, 1-year contracts. Now, if you ask anybody at that club at that time, I was one of the fittest players, even though I was 30. You know, I still was one of the fittest players. Salary or a contract financially wasn't mentioned. It was just mentioned that Dave and the club, that was their policy of a 1-year contract. We didn't really get round to talking about numbers because I thought that I probably deserved a little bit more, even 2 years. I had Sheffield United offering me a 3-year contract. I lived in Leeds. There wasn't really a decision to make because I never really got to talk about salary to Wigan. Do I wish that they would have offered me a salary so I could have compared, or a 2-year contract? Of course, because I knew that Wigan would get promoted that next year. I knew they would get promoted. But if you have an offer of a tentative offer of a 1-year contract with no salary fixed to it yet, just we might offer you a year, or you have a 3-year contract here physically that you can see with security for a massive club like Sheffield United, which it was, then there's no real decision there to make, Jay. I had a house, things like that. I'm not going to do that. I don't think anybody in that position, I don't think, and if I had my time again, like you're saying, I don't want to relive, but if I'd do the same thing again. I had no choice.
Was it quite disappointing that you didn't really get an opportunity and that choice to stay at Wigan and decide between the two clubs?
If I would have had a choice between the two clubs, if it would have been similar contracts and similar length, I would have signed for Wigan Athletic. I loved it there. I didn't want to leave. There's no way I wanted to leave because I knew what was going to happen. But I had no choice. I just had no choice. And like I said, even if it had been not a smaller club or whatever, but Sheffield United was a massive club. Paul warned me about it. Paul Jewell warned me about signing for Sheffield United in terms of it would be much different to what I'd known there. So maybe that may have come into consideration a little bit. But would I don't know. That's an interesting question maybe to ask the club, or maybe we'll ask Paul or ask whoever was making those decisions. Do you wish? Because I knew, I know they signed David Graham, and I don't think that really worked to replace me. It didn't. I don't know if that worked as well as what they hoped it would be. But yes, do I wish I could have played for Wigan Athletic in the Premier League? Of course I do. But the opportunity never arose. And I stayed at Sheffield United for a year, and I had a great year at Sheffield United. Great club, great lads. A really fantastic club to play for. I really enjoyed it. But yes, of course, I would have liked the opportunity to play for Wigan in the Premier League. It never arose, Jay. Never arose.
It's a great answer and a really honest answer too. And one of the questions also from the fans and from myself as well, really, how different was the club from when you first signed to when you left?
Well, it's like night and day. Just in the ethic of the players, the mentality of the players, the mentality of the club, to be quite honest. It was like night and day. The facilities improved, which is fine. People make too much about facilities. They think, the pitch and this, that, and the other. You've got to remember, most of the guys that have played, as kids, we've played on, rubbish pitches and porta cabin changing rooms. People make a lot about that. I know nowadays these Premier League grounds and training facilities are like space age stuff. Yeah, great, good for them. But like I said, it ain't rocket science football. But the it just changed. It was more progressive. It was more. It was just better. It was just better in every area. But the main thing was that the team was better. You're You can have the best training ground in the world. You can have the nicest pitch in the world. You can have the nicest facilities in the world. You can have the best menu for lunch for all the players. You can do whatever you want. If you're not delivering the product on the pitch on a Saturday at 3:00, you've got no chance. No chance. And that's what we did, and that's what they did during that period.
It was a fantastic period that I was a part of, and during your career, you impact not only the fans of Wigan Athletic, but Oldham Athletic as well. When we announced we was doing this Q&A, we had a couple of fans from Oldham questions too, and Kent Latimer has asked, how do you reflect on your time at Oldham Athletic, and what's your favourite moment there? We talked about that amazing free kick as well earlier in the podcast / Q&A.
Great time at Wigan Athletic. Ronnie Moore signed me. Oldham Athletic. Ronnie Moore signed me. Played for a year for Ronnie. Ronnie lost his job, unfortunately. Somewhat unfortunately, I don't think that was the right thing to do, but it happened. And then John Sheridan came, and I really loved playing for Shez. I really loved him. And when he'd got the Wigan job, I really wished it would have gone better for the team and for him. But difficult circumstances. But a great guy to play for. One of my heroes as a kid. I was a Leeds United fan. And a great guy, just great club. Got great memories of that club. Family club, fantastic club to play for. It's a real shame what's happened to them now. Real shame. And I just had great memories and just lots of fond memories of playing for them. Great set of lads, good players. We had some good players. Some players that should have been playing at a higher level. Richie Wellens, for example, fantastic player. Richie, a really top player, top lad as well. Chris Porter, the striker, really good player. Paul Warne, Richard Butcher, God bless him. They passed away at a very young age. A guy I was friendly with and a really good player. Some Will Haining, just the list goes on for the Oldham lads. I had a really good time playing for Oldham. Really good time. I was sad how that ended. I was sad with the ending, how that ended, and I'm sad to see the club in that position they're in now, because what's happening there is not right.
It's a great answer. And Oldham, they've got quite a few great players as well who used to play for Wigan. At this moment in time, Conor McAlealy used to be at Everton. And the next question from an Oldham fan as well, and he's called Curtis Dockray, and he wants to know, did you ever miss a penalty? Because he says even now he'd bring you on for Oldham just to take a penalty, because there's a guarantee that it'll probably go in.
No, I never missed a penalty for Oldham. No, it was I'd practiced him a lot. I had the mentality that I wanted to score more than the goalkeeper wanted to save it, and that worked because I didn't miss. So yeah, I'm not surprised he wants me back to take penalties. I'm not surprised, because I was pretty reliable from him. Yeah,
it's always nice. I think it's always nice as an ex-footballer, even 10 years on from when you used to play, getting messages from fans of Oldham, Wigan Athletic, and other clubs you play for.
It's because it's a very fortunate to be. They've had to pay money in to come and watch, and when people do that, you want to give them something that, or you try hard to give them something that they will enjoy, whether that's tackling or scoring or fighting for the team, or that's what fans want to see. They want to see you putting in as much effort as you can possibly, because obviously every single professional footballer's got ability, because they wouldn't be a professional footballer if they didn't. But what some of them do lack is that willingness to play with. I'm going to explain what I mean. Play with pain, and I mean mental or physical pain. I mean being fit and running, Jay, and playing your hardest hurts. It hurts. So if you can put up with that hurt and want more of it, and will do everything you can to fight through it, fans see that. They also see the opposite, the ones that don't want to do that. And that's part of the job, I'm afraid. And I think they show a lot more, or a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for, pride or support or encouragement to players that do that. And I always try to pride myself that I would do that. And I prepared myself physically to do that. I used to train in the summer harder than I used to train with any team, harder. I used to join an athletics club in the summer, knowing that when the going gets tough and it needs to be the extra yard, I'd be able to do it. And you have to remember, as a football player, you have a duty to do that to people that are paying to watch you. I know that they're not in the stadium at the minute, but when they do come back, a lot of players don't have that. You have a duty to work as hard as you possibly can to those people that have paid to watch you. And when you don't, I'm afraid that you're cheating yourself and you're cheating them.
It's a very admirable answer. And I think during your career, no fan would ever fault your effort levels. You work so hard for every team you play for, as you mentioned earlier in the interview as well, because I think hard work is the bare minimum for every footballer. In my opinion, you should always try your best to work your hardest for the team, and I think everything else is secondary after that, in terms of putting the hard work in. And in your career, you also represented Scotland at under 21 level. How close did you come to playing for the Scottish senior team?
I came pretty close, actually. It was a funny story. I played for the under-21s when I was at Barnsley, and I loved it. It was fantastic. Some really good memories, a really good team. We actually got to the semi-finals of the European Championships. I think that was the last time that an under-21 team from Scotland had got to it. Some really good players in it. But there was a thing called the Scotland Futures team, and it was supposed to be aimed at sort of younger guys. And I was sort of 28, 29, and they put me in the squad. As you can imagine, Paul Jewell had a good laugh about that. But it was like a B team, and I went up and I played with the squad, and Bertie Volts was the manager. Interesting character, but they put me on standby for a first team squad sort of thing as a tournament that was happening in the summer, but nothing ever came of it. So I think the closest I'd got was like a B team thing. But yeah, that was amusing for Paul anyway when he told me you're in the Scotland future squad, but you're 29. That's some future, isn't it? Yeah, he had a good giggle at that one. But no, the 21s games, I really, my father was Scottish. Took great pride in it. In listening to the national anthem playing for the under 21s was a really good experience.
I know you mentioned earlier that you have no regrets from your career, but do you sometimes regret not getting a chance to play for Scotland in the first team?
No, it's not a regret because it's nothing I could do about it, Jay. I think regrets are for if you do something that you regret doing. I didn't get the chance to do that. I got the chance to play for the 21s. I got the chance to train with the B. I did the best I could on all them occasions. And I didn't get the chance to play for Scotland. It wasn't like I got the chance and said, I don't want to play. I can't regret it because I never did it. So I was never given the opportunity. Would I have liked the opportunity to play? Of course I would. But
that's a very fair answer. Very fair answer. And Sean O'Hara asked, which is quite an interesting question in my opinion, if you didn't become a footballer, what do you think you would have done?
I think I would have been in some sort of physical education role, teacher, physical education teacher or university, something like that. My plan was, if I wasn't going to make it as a footballer, because I did a 1 year, as it's called, a YTS scheme back in the 90s, which was a grand total of £27.50 a week. I was looking to go to America. I would have gone to America on a university. I wasn't bad at school. I'd got quite some decent education qualifications when I was at school. And when it came around to the time of Barnsley making decisions on players, I had a conversation with somebody that was scouting for American universities. And I said I would be interested in that if I didn't sign a pro, but I was quite confident I was going to sign a professional contract at Barnsley. I'd done a year YTS. I was a top scorer in the team. I was playing for the reserves. We had just won the league for the first time in a long time. So I was quite confident that I would. And that youth team that I played in actually would, I think, 7 out of 10 players signed professional, which was unheard of. You'd normally get 1 or 2, but there was 7. So that tells you the level of the team. But probably something like that, physical education teacher or university or something like that, because I enjoyed that side of it.
I think you do a great job. I also think you do a great job in terms of leadership, because just from talking to you, the honesty you always show is very refreshing. You say it how it is, and I always appreciate people who are straight talking like that. And Johnny Green has asked, did you ever consider going into management after retired?
I got forced into it. Never really anything that, and I never had a big plan for. I know people do have big plans and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I never really had a big plan for post-career. I could say things that I would like to do, but you never know if you're going to have the opportunity. When the opportunity arises, you're either going to do it or you're not. So the opportunity arose at Rotherham to do the managing, and I did enjoy it for 5 or 6 weeks. What I didn't enjoy was how can I say it politely, the people not telling you the truth. People telling you something to your face and then going behind you and saying something else. I didn't enjoy, even for the 6 weeks, dealing with football agents on the phone, doing this, that, and the other. Really, goodness me. I can, people tell me sometimes, I got a famous quote, how do you know a football agent's lying? Because his lips are moving. And it's just, I didn't enjoy that, but I enjoyed interacting with the players. I enjoyed interacting with the staff, all that stuff. But the stuff behind it, which is why I've got so much admiration for guys like Mick, Paul, who did it for years, all these managers, Alex Ferguson, just you name it, guys that have got a real longevity, because I did it for 6 weeks. And I still speak to Warney now, Paul Warner, who's doing it at Rotherham. My hat goes off to them because it's 24/7. You don't see your family. There's no quality of life. You know, people are missing out on seeing their kids grow up. I've spoken to many managers and coaches who've said that I miss my kids growing up, and I don't want to do that. I'm not prepared to do that. I'm fortunate that I don't have to do it, because having to do something and not having to do something is there's a difference in it. If you understand what I mean, I don't know if I'm explaining that properly. Needing to do something is different to having to do something. Like, I need to go out and exercise to help my mental health, to help my family. You know, I need to go on my bike or go for a run or go for a walk. Having to do something is different. And I don't want to have to do that, because basically I don't want to miss my kids growing up. I don't want to do that. And do I think I'm capable of it? It's interesting, because you're not the first person that said you might be suitable to do something like that. And I'm confident in my ability, or my experience I've learned from people like Paul and Mick, that I think I could be capable of doing that. But it's not something I want to do, Jay, because for me, in my circumstances, how they are, I don't want to miss my kids growing up. So if I've got to go and do a totally different job, which, I mean, I have been doing over here in these times in coronavirus, people are losing jobs left, right and centre. I've been helping work out at a removals company, a furniture removals company, and an ordering company that's English based, that's helps the English guys over here. I would rather do that and see my family grow up, to be quite honest.
That's a really caring answer, and really remarkable for you to say that. And it's always nice to see how much of a family man you are. You've come across brilliant in this episode, and thanks for some excellent answers, and thanks for the fans for the equally brilliant questions. And the reason we're producing the podcast today and this Q&A session is to help raise awareness for mental health. Andy, how much of an impact does mental health have on footballers?
Well, it's huge. It's massive. And I think only in the recent few years, when it's become a hot topic for people to talk about, to try and help with, try and find answers to, try and make it better. I think it's only in the recent times, but it's gone on for so long. It's good that now it's coming out and people are finding people to talk to, and counsellors and psychologists, and the game should be doing more for ex-players. There's no doubt about that, with the amount of money that's washing around in. But unfortunately, football as a business is ruthless. It is dog eat dog. You know, once you leave the game, you're yesterday's man or woman, and you move on. And that's how clubs are. And that's how a lot of players are. But mental health, if you don't have good mental health, if you are struggling, then your life is going to be a struggle. And the struggle of the people around you is going to be a struggle. So it is a vital component in being healthy and happy, to be quite honest.
Did you have any experiences with mental health during your career or after your career as a player?
Yes. I mean, related to football, not really, because I mean, if you say you're quite strong mentally, I don't know, but I was always super confident, without being arrogant, in my ability to work harder than everybody else, and that gave me great comfort. I knew I wasn't better than everybody else, but I knew I would work harder, if not as hard as everybody else. So that gave me great comfort, that anything that came across my way I could deal with, no problem. Speaking outside that, when we lost my daughter, that was hard. That was really hard. You don't expect to lose a child. You don't expect to carry a coffin with your child in it. So that was hard. That was hard for me and my wife. So I sought a lot of counselling about that. I sought a lot of guidance about that. And that's something that those people that help me will... Sometimes it's hard to talk about, Jay, to be honest.
I'm really sorry to have...
No, it's not. It's fine. It's fine.
It's really brave of you to say.
Every time you should. It's an example of it. It's those people that helped me, are salt of the earth people, and they helped us get from a dark place. It was, you know, if you've got children or people, it's something that I couldn't describe to you if you haven't gone through it. Yeah. And to come out the other end of it and move on with your life is hard, really hard. people get into some dark holes and people don't come out of it, Jay. So the biggest thing I learned about that and that time in my life was to talk, to try and speak to people. And it helped. It didn't cure it, because nothing can cure it. Nothing can do that for me or my wife. But helping to get on with your life and helping to move on with your family life and do that is fine. But it did knock the stuffing out of me. It had a massive effect on me and my wife, and still does to this day, in a positive way as well as a negative way. So that is probably the biggest instance, or biggest, what's the word I'm saying, biggest factor that came into it was the mental health. And it was a dark period, a really dark period. But, you know, we're not in that period now. So you move on, you don't forget, but as time goes by, it gets easier. It does get easier. But, you know, I remember those dark times, and the people that helped us, myself and my wife, especially the hospice, where our daughter passed away at Martin House in Leeds. It was an amazing place, absolutely amazing place for families.
I really applaud your bravery for speaking out about this. And in terms of starting the conversation and receiving counselling, I know it's quite scary at first, but how much of a weight do you feel was lifted off your shoulders when you started that process of counselling?
I mean, it was huge. It was huge. I mean, we didn't do a lot of sessions. I must say, we didn't do a lot of sessions, me and my wife, because we were it was a tough spot. It was a grief counselling we were having, and we didn't do a lot of it. But just the once or twice that we did, it helped massively. And just even talking, just talking, me and my wife, or, you know, my father who's passed away now, but at the time he was a big help, and everybody was a big help around us. But I would say that as men, especially men, they don't want to talk about things like that. They want to keep it inside, and I've learned to be better with that the older I've got. And my wife's already pretty good at it, but I've learned that. And people that are struggling, especially in professional sport, because you don't want to admit weakness, Jay. You do not want to admit weakness if you're a professional sports person, especially a football player, because it's seen as a weakness. A mental health problem would be seen as a weakness. And I know it's got better now, but still, it's still a massive, massive effect in changing rooms, because I've been in plenty of them as a player and as a coach. So it is getting better, but it's still there. And when you're having problems at such a degree that it's affecting your life in a massive, massive way, you need to speak to people about it, speak to professionals, speak to anybody about it, speak to your friends, speak to your family, speak to professionals, but speak, because if you don't, it's not good. It's just not good.
Do you think that sometimes the fame and fortune and stuff of that nature involved in football acts as a barrier for footballers to speak out and be open about it? Because I know Roy Carroll in his interview with me, when he was speaking about his mental health, he said he didn't want to open up about it as much because he would sign a player who is open about having depression and having these issues that he was going through at the time.
Yes, I think when you're football players, it's hard to trust people. It's very hard to trust people, because you can be suspicious of them, because, you know, if you tell somebody, like, for instance, if you had a psychologist at a club, would you really be 100% guaranteed that whatever you told to the psychologist would not go back to tell the manager, and then you wouldn't play? And that might not be a rational thing to think, but that's how football players think. So there's that. There's also, and it is, you know, rationally, when you think about it, it shouldn't be that you think it's a sign of weakness, but they do. And I can totally understand how Roy says that, because Roy did have his battles, and without saying that, I know Roy really well, because I've read enough about it and seen enough about it to see that he had some real difficulties, and it's full credit to him that he's fixed those difficulties. But it is to come out and be honest about it, I think, is more acceptable now. It'd be more accepted, but I still think that there would be I still think you would be a little bit tainted with it. I think people outside of that would look at you and think, "Oh, not sure," when really they shouldn't do that. But that's the world we live in. I'm afraid it's very it can be very judgmental, and social media don't help that. It really doesn't. Social media's got a big part to play in that. It's in the negatives. There is some positive things, like people like yourself are doing to try and improve it. We've got a long way to go with that before it gets anywhere near acceptable.
I think you raised some great points there. And in terms of, you mentioned earlier, male stigma attached to mental health. I think traditionally it used to be definitely a sign of weakness, or perceived as a sign of weakness, I should say, in better terminology. And I think the phrase is "man up" used to get used quite a lot to describe someone saying that I'm feeling low, I need to speak to someone. How do you think the world's changing in that point of view, that there is a little bit more of an open stigma to talking about mental health now, especially in terms of men?
I think it's a big responsibility for parents like myself. I think that's where your role models start, with your parents. I think we need to speak to our kids about saying, if you've got some problems or whatever's wrong, you can always speak to us, your parents, your mother, your father, your close, and just teaching kids. That's how you do it, because they're the ones that are going to be growing up, and they're the ones that it gets better and better. Like the people that are coming through now, that are the younger people, it's not such a stigma to them. If you'd have said, back when I was playing, if you'd have said somebody in the changing room was depressed, you just get on with it, man up, get on with it. It's not the same now, and that's credit to the people like yourself that are making it more accessible, more in the open, and there's not such a stigma turned to it. But I think it's up to us as a human race, parents especially, to teach the kids. I talk to my son all the time and try and tell him, he's 8 years old, but he's starting to ask questions about things like that, about social media, about this and that. It's up to us to speak to them and to teach them that some people are more prone to things like that than others, but you must speak to people about it. You must speak to people if you have problems, because you can't carry all the problems in the world on your shoulders, because that's not healthy for you or the people around you.
Absolutely. And what advice would you give to someone who is struggling with their mental health?
Talk to somebody about it, no matter who it is. Just talk to somebody about it. Talk to somebody about it. It's especially with the males, especially with football players, that it's hard to tell them. It's hard enough getting professional football players to pick the phone up when they're struggling, because they don't want to do that. But it's just speak to somebody. Just, the PFA have got a big role to play in it as well, especially with the football. If you go back to the football players, the PFA have got a big role to play in this. A big role. If you're going to be a union for your members, then you need to look after them, and you need to find solutions for people that are struggling with mental health. But just in general, just try and speak to somebody about it, speak to a professional about it. If I go over my own experience, like I said, with any counsellors that I've spoke to or things like that, they've always helped me. And even if it's only a small bit, any help is good help.
Absolutely. I'm going to use a Tesco's motto, but every little does help when it comes to mental health. And it was Tesco's isn't intended to be in that manner, but you can apply different sayings to different means of life. And I think with how we're seeing the world develop now with social media, that's been quite a big form, and in where sometimes mental health stems from. I recently watched, I probably shouldn't admit this as publicly as I am doing right now, but I'm not ashamed to say I watched the Little Mix documentary with Jessie Nelson, Odd One Out, and she suffered a really extreme case of bullying because she was known as the Odd One Out in Little Mix, and it was interesting, her journey to kind of overcome that, and obviously how it made it feel. Because do you think nowadays with social media, it makes it so much easier to just send a message to someone, and because it's just words on a screen, you don't realise the impact it has on that person?
They're just cowards, Jay. They're cowards. I take it back to, I'll never forget this. I'm thinking about this when it happened at the time, thinking, I wonder if they'd do that if I was walking down the street. So I'm playing for Wigan at Northampton, actually, and we get a penalty. And I'm going up to the penalty and I'm thinking, what are they singing? And they were singing, Liddell is a paedophile, as I'm getting ready to take a penalty. All right. Now there's all these idiots behind the goal singing that. I stick the penalty away. I give it that to them. But after the game, I had a real moment. I thought, I wonder if any single one of them people would do that in the street as I walk past them. And I bet they wouldn't. So you've got that to cope with. And then if they did that on a screen and sent that to me, 5,000 followers or whatever it is happening, how do you think that would make me feel? How do you think that makes that girl feel in Little Mix? It's awful. But social media has a massive, massive points about. I use social media. Everybody uses social media if you've got the technology to use it. And the social media people have a big responsibility as well, because it shouldn't be allowed. It should not be allowed. You've got people committing suicide with links to social media bullying, and it's disgraceful, and it should be stopped. It shouldn't be allowed to happen. Nobody should be allowed to call me what those people called me. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. It's not on. It's not right. And just because they're in a group, and just because they've paid money to go and watch somebody play football who's doing his job, to speak about that, and there's been obviously loads of cases about that, people calling you this and that, and people have far worse cases of that. But that's something that always stuck with me. Those people would never do that face to face, walk into the street, because I'd like to see what I would do if they did.
Yeah.
But it's not. It shouldn't be allowed. It shouldn't be allowed. And that's just a simple matter of doing that, and then it's taking it onto a screen, and it's anonymously. Come on.
It makes it so easy to just hide behind the keyboard almost. And I've always been quite interested to know, when, as a footballer, when you're getting hurled abuse at for all sorts of different reasons, completely unjustifiable, with some of the language that is used, some of the vitriol that's used towards footballers, how does that make you feel on a mental point of view, mental health wise?
Never affected me on the pitch, never affected me, because the people shouting it wouldn't be shouting it if they weren't scared of what I could do to their team. So they're trying to put me off. Part of the gamesmanship again. It did affect me when my family was watching, and my wife would be watching, and people would be screaming obscenities and things like that. That's not on. That made me, my mother's having to sit up there and that's not on. But what could I do about that? I couldn't do anything about that. And luckily my mother knew what it was. My father was a professional footballer, so she'd done all that through her, and so she knew. So, but that, that's, just think about that. It would make people think twice if they did it to them. It would make people think twice if, it's not the case now in these times, but if 15,000 people went to sit at them, if they're a bricklayer and they lay some dodgy bricks and 15,000 people started screaming obscenities at them, see how the wall would be after that? I don't think it'd be very good, would it?
I think that's a very fair point. And I just want to just say, so thank you so much for appearing on this podcast and Mental Health Supporters Q&A today. I really applaud your bravery on some of the answers you gave, not only on your playing career, but in terms of mental health. And I always like to end the podcast of, do you have a message you'd like to say to the Wigan Athletic supporters, or supporters in general of football, or the clubs you play for?
Well, for the Wigan Athletic supporters, I'd give them a message saying, look, I hope it gets better for you. It's not great at the minute. I'm sure it will get better. It's unfortunate what's happening there. It's a disgrace, really, what's happening there. But without knowing the ins and outs of it, it's not. But any person, irrespective if you've got links to football or no links to football, if you can't stand football, if you watch football or whatever, if you're struggling and your mental health is affecting you, speak to people, because we're in strange times. The lockdown and it really affects people as families, as jobs, everything. It's affecting everything, and it's never been more prevalent than it is now. We're in a really strange time. Like I said, it can be very hard, and you need to speak to people. And sometimes it's better to speak to somebody independent, because sometimes you speak to your wife or you speak to your father, you speak to your, and they're very close to you. So just getting somebody independent to speak to. But if you can talk to somebody about your problems, they might not be able to fix them, because nobody can fix all the problems that everybody has, but they will listen to you. And sometimes that's all you need. You need somebody just to listen to you.
If you are struggling with your mental health and you need someone to speak to, the Wigan Athletic Supporters Mental Health Group is available for absolutely anyone. We have a group on Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter and Instagram, and our DMs are always open for anyone who'd like to have a chat. It's a really positive community where anyone can open up about any worries or concerns they may have without the fear of being judged. Over the last couple of months, we've had over 500 members join on various different platforms, and I feel like it's been really special to see everyone bond and form a great community. And I think, although we all have different backgrounds, different situations, different lifestyles, different livelihoods, we're all the same in our love for Wigan Athletic, and that's what makes the group so special. So if you are struggling with your mental health, you can find the Wigan Athletic Mental Health Group on all different various social media platforms available in the link down below. If you enjoyed the special episode with Andy Liddell, please, obviously, like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel. We'll do a lot more events just like this. And obviously, like I said, feel free to join the group. We're always welcome to it. And Everyone who watches it always means a lot to myself, Adam Brooks, who is the mental health ambassador, and everyone involved in the Wigan Athletic supporters mental health group. So take care, and I'll see you for the next video in the hopefully near future.